Welcome to our channel, your gateway to the most spine-chilling tales and unnerving true stories. Today, we present a harrowing true story, The Haunting of Mirror Lake. Get ready to be on the edge of your seat as we delve into this unsettling narrative. But be warned, comfort is the last thing you'll find here. The remote wilderness of Canada is a place of untold beauty and mystery. It is here, in this untouched paradise, that photographer David embarks on a journey to capture the legend of Mirror Lake. The lake is said to have the unique ability to reflect not only the sky and surrounding trees, but also the souls of those who have died. It is a place of both staggering beauty and profound sadness. As David arrives at the shore of Mirror Lake, he sets up his camera on a tripod, carefully adjusting the focus and exposure settings. The sun is setting, casting a warm glow over the water, painting the horizon in hues of orange and pink. He checks his watch, noting the time with a sense of anticipation. Tonight, he will witness the legendary phenomenon that has drawn him here, the full moon rising over Mirror Lake. As the night deepens, the stars begin to twinkle in the inky black sky. The air grows cold, and a light breeze rustles through the trees. David shivers, pulling his parka tighter around him. He looks out over the lake, watching as the ripples from the wind dance across the surface. He cannot wait for the moon to rise, for the lake to reveal its secrets. The first hint of the moon's presence comes as a sliver of silver peeks over the eastern horizon. It grows brighter with each passing moment, illuminating the lake in a soft, ethereal glow. The trees cast long, eerie shadows across the shore, and David can feel a shiver of excitement run down his spine. At last, the moon clears the treetops, bathing the lake in its silvery light. As David watches in awe, the surface of Mirror Lake begins to ripple and distort. The ripples grow larger and more frantic, as if the lake itself is struggling to break free from some unseen force. He trains his camera on the water, waiting for the perfect moment to capture the mysterious figures that he knows are about to appear. And then, as if by magic, they emerge from the depths. Ghostly figures, trapped beneath the surface, rise up from the darkness. Their features are obscured by the water, but David can make out the forms of men, women, and children. They move with a grace that belies their otherworldly nature, gliding through the water as if they are floating on air. The moonlight reflects off their translucent skin, casting an ethereal glow that illuminates the lake in a way that is both beautiful and haunting. David's heart races as he takes photo after photo, capturing the eerie scene before him. He feels as if he is witnessing something truly extraordinary, something that will change the course of his life. But as he watches the figures dance across the surface of the lake, he can't help but feel a sense of dread creeping up on him. He knows that there is a dark secret hidden beneath the surface of Mirror Lake, a secret that he will soon uncover. As the last rays of the moonlight fade away, the ghostly figures disappear back into the depths. David packs up his camera, a mixture of awe and unease coursing through his veins. He knows that the story he has just witnessed is far more complex and terrifying than he ever could have imagined. The legend of Mirror Lake is about to come to life, and David is at the center of it all. David couldn't shake the haunting images from his mind. The ethereal figures trapped beneath the surface of Mirror Lake, their ghostly forms rippling with each passing moment. He knew he had stumbled upon something truly remarkable, something that could potentially change the course of his career. He decided then and there that he would return to the lake every full moon until he uncovered the truth behind its mysterious legends. For weeks, David dedicated his life to researching the history of Mirror Lake and its surrounding area. He read through countless journals and documents, each one providing a new clue or piece of the puzzle. He learned that the lake had been the site of a tragic accident many years ago, when a group of teenagers had been swimming and a strong undercurrent had swept them away. Their bodies were never recovered, and it was believed that they had drowned. However, local folklore persisted, claiming that the spirits of the drowned teenagers had never found peace and continued to haunt the lake. As the next full moon approached, David felt a sense of anticipation and trepidation wash over him. He packed his camera and equipment, carefully planning his approach for the night. He wanted to capture not only the ethereal visions of the ghosts, but also any other supernatural occurrences that might happen around the lake. The night of the full moon began much like any other night in the remote wilderness of Canada. A chill wind rustled through the trees, and the stars twinkled brilliantly in the inky black sky. David set up his camera near the shore of Mirror Lake, positioning it to catch the reflection of the moon on the water's surface. As he waited for the first ripples, he felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. The stillness was broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the rustle of leaves in the wind. David waited, his heart pounding in his chest, as the first tendrils of light began to dance across the surface of the lake. The ripples grew stronger, and soon the surface of the water was aflame with the reflection of the full moon. He held his breath, waiting for the ghostly forms to appear. And then, they did. The spirits of the drowned teenagers rose from the depths of the lake, their ethereal forms twisting and turning in a dance of death. They drifted closer to the shore, their eyes vacant and their limbs slack. David couldn't help but feel a deep sense of sorrow as he watched them, knowing that their restless spirits would never find peace. He raised his camera, capturing their haunting visages for all the world to see. As the night wore on, David noticed something else. The forest surrounding the lake seemed to be alive with activity. Strange animal sightings became more frequent, and he could swear he heard whispering voices on the wind. He decided to investigate further, venturing deeper into the woods to see if he could uncover any clues as to the source of these disturbances. Hours later, as the first rays of dawn began to streak the sky, David emerged from the forest, exhausted and shaken. He had stumbled upon an abandoned cabin, its doors hanging off their hinges and its windows boarded up. A sense of dread filled him as he approached the cabin, and he knew that whatever secrets it held would change his life forever. With trembling hands, he pushed open the rotted door and stepped inside. The air inside the cabin was musty and stale, and cobwebs hung from the rafters like delicate lace. In the center of the main room, he found a dusty old book, its leather binding worn and cracked. Curiosity getting the better of him, he picked up the book and began to read. The pages told a tale of unspeakable horror, of a coven of witches who had once inhabited the cabin, practicing dark magic and summoning demons from the depths of hell. They had used the lake as a source of power, sacrificing innocent lives to maintain their twisted version of reality. But their power had been thwarted when a group of brave villagers had burned down the cabin and put an end to their reign of terror. The witches had fled, leaving their spirits trapped in the forest and the lake, doomed to wander the earth for all eternity. David felt a shiver run down his spine as he read the final lines of the book. He knew now that the spirits he had been seeing were not the ghosts of the drowned teenagers, but rather the vengeful spirits of the witches. He also knew that the disturbances in the forest and the lake were not random occurrences, but rather the desperate attempts of the witches to regain their power and find a way back to the world of the living. As the sun rose higher in the sky, David made his way back to his car, his mind racing with the implications of what he had discovered. He knew that he had stumbled upon something truly incredible, something that could potentially change the course of history. But he also knew that he was not prepared for the dark and dangerous world that he had just entered. The choice was clear. He could continue to document the haunting of Mirror Lake and the activities of the witches, risking his life and sanity in the process, or he could walk away and pretend that he had never seen the things he had seen. The decision would not be an easy one, but it was one that he would have to make soon. For now, all he could do was wait for the next full moon and hope that the spirits of the witches would reveal their next move. David had been searching for answers ever since he stumbled upon the legend of Mirror Lake, and now he felt like he was getting closer to the truth. He had tracked down an elderly Native American shaman who lived deep in the forest, isolated from the outside world. The shaman had agreed to meet with him, but his expression was grave as he warned David of the danger he was in. "You must understand, young one," the shaman began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Mirror Lake is not just any body of water. It is sacred ground, a place where the spirits of the ancestors dwell." He gestured toward the horizon, where the hazy outline of the lake could just be seen through the trees. "Many years ago, before your people came here, my people lived in harmony with these spirits. We respected their power, and in return, they granted us the bounty of the land." David nodded, his curiosity piqued. "Then why did you sacrifice the young girl?" he asked, unable to contain his fascination with the story. The shaman's eyes clouded over at the mention of the tragedy. "It was not a sacrifice, as you put it," he said softly. "It was a terrible mistake, made out of fear and desperation. Our tribe had angered the spirits of the lake. We had hunted too many animals, cut down too many trees. We did not understand the balance that must be maintained between our people and the spirits." He took a deep breath, his expression distant as he relived the painful memories. There was a young girl, no more than a child, who had been born with a strange mark upon her skin. The spirits had marked her as one of their own, destined to live out her days in service to them. The elders decided that she must be taken to the lake to appease the anger of the spirits and beg for their forgiveness. The shaman's voice grew distant, his gaze fixed on the middle distance. But the journey was long and arduous, and the tribe could not bear the burden any longer. They grew angry and desperate. They abandoned the girl in the forest, hoping that the spirits would find her and spare them. It was not meant to be this way. David felt a chill run down his spine as he listened to the old man's tale. "What happened?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The spirits did find her," the shaman continued, his voice heavy with sorrow. "They took her into the depths of the lake, where she drowned. But her spirit was not at peace. She had been betrayed by her own people, and now she was trapped, unable to move on. It is her spirit that you see in your photographs, David. She is the one who haunts the lake, searching for a way to be set free." The shaman fixed David with a piercing gaze. "You must understand, my young friend. The spirits of Mirror Lake are not to be trifled with. They are ancient and powerful, and they will not forgive those who disturb their rest. If you continue down this path, you will not survive." David's heart pounded in his chest as he processed the old man's words. He knew that the shaman was right, that he was putting himself in grave danger. But at the same time, he couldn't help but feel a sense of determination, a need to uncover the truth about the girl and her tragic fate. He thanked the shaman for his wisdom and left the old man's camp, his mind spinning with thoughts of what he had just learned. As he walked back toward his car, he glanced one last time at the forest surrounding the lake, wondering if he would ever truly be able to leave it behind. The full moon rose in the sky, its ethereal light casting an eerie glow over the trees. David climbed into his car, started the engine, and began the long drive back to civilization. He knew that he couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his gut, that he would never be able to forget the haunting tale of the girl who had been sacrificed to the spirits of Mirror Lake. As he drove, he found himself wondering if there was some way he could help her, some way to set her spirit free. He knew that it was a dangerous game he was playing, but he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of responsibility toward the girl, as if their fates were somehow intertwined. The journey back to his normal life seemed more distant than ever, and David knew that the path he had chosen would lead him down a dark and twisted road, one fraught with peril at every turn. But despite the risks, he couldn't help but feel a sense of determination burning within him, a need to see this thing through to the end, no matter the cost. As he drove away from the forest, the lights of the city began to twinkle in the distance, promising a world of modern comfort and safety. But David knew that the shadows lurking just beyond the glow of civilization's artificial light were far darker and more dangerous than anything he could possibly imagine. And it was into those shadows that he was about to step, his fate sealed, his destiny inevitable. He steeled himself for the journey ahead, bracing for the battles he knew he would face, both internal and external. And as he drove deeper into the night, he could feel the weight of history pressing down upon him, the ghosts of the past whispering their secrets in his ear, urging him forward, compelling him to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The girl in the photographs, the one who had been sacrificed to the spirits of Mirror Lake, had become his guide, his muse, his obsession. And as long as she remained trapped, he would never be free. It was a burden he had taken upon himself, a weight he would carry for the rest of his days. But he was determined, more determined than ever, to see this thing through to the end, no matter the cost. Because in the end, it wasn't just about him. It was about her, and he owed it to her to set her spirit free. The journey had begun. The end was still far away, hidden in the mists of time and legend. But David knew, deep in his heart, that he would find a way. He would find a way to set her free. And in the process, he would find his own redemption. He glanced up at the moon, hanging low in the sky, and whispered a silent prayer to the spirits of the forest. "I'm coming for you," he said, his voice barely audible over the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, "and I won't stop until you let her go." The forest surrounding Mirror Lake had always been shrouded in mystery, but to David, it was more than that. It was a place of obsession. Ever since he first stumbled upon the legend of the haunted lake while on a photography trip in the remote wilderness of Canada, he had been unable to shake the feeling that there was something more to it, something waiting to be discovered. He had spent countless hours poring over ancient texts and speaking with local elders, piecing together bits and pieces of the story. It was a tale of sorrow and loss, of a young girl who had been taken from her tribe by forces beyond their control. A girl who was believed to have drowned in the lake, her spirit trapped forever among its eerie depths. But as David delved deeper, he began to uncover secrets that had been hidden for generations. he found an old, tattered diary buried beneath the roots of a fallen tree. The diary belonged to a researcher who had studied the area decades ago, and in its yellowed pages, he found the truth about what had really happened to the girl. It turned out that she was not a sacrificial offering, as the legends had suggested. She was not killed as part of some twisted ritual. She was simply a young girl who had been enjoying the day with her friends, swimming in the crystal-clear waters of the lake. But tragedy struck when she was knocked unconscious by a wayward tree branch, her body sinking like a stone to the bottom. The tribe, panicking and desperate to appease the spirits of the lake, had made a terrible mistake. They had buried her deep within its depths, convinced that this was what she had wanted. But the spirits were not placated. They were enraged, their wrath unquenchable. And so, for generations, they had haunted the forest and the lake, seeking vengeance against those who had wronged them. As David read the final entry in the diary, his heart raced with a mixture of fear and determination. He knew now that he had to put an end to this curse, once and for all. He had to find a way to bring peace to the spirits of the lake, and to finally lay the girl's restless soul to rest. He set out once more into the forest, his footsteps echoing through the mist-shrouded trees. The air was thick with anticipation, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He could feel the presence of the spirits all around him, their anger and their pain like a tangible force. As he approached the edge of the lake, he paused for a moment, taking in the eerie stillness that hung over the water. The surface of the lake rippled and distorted, reflecting the twisted shapes of the trees that surrounded it. It was as if the very air was alive with their restless energy. Taking a deep breath, David stepped forward, his feet sinking into the soft earth. He knelt down beside the lake, feeling the cold, damp ground seep through his pants. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his senses, trying to feel the presence of the spirits. And then, from the depths of the lake, came a whisper. A single, faint voice that seemed to echo through the forest, carrying with it a note of sadness and despair. It was the voice of the girl, trapped for so long beneath the surface. Her voice guided him, leading him to a hidden cove where the water was shallow enough for him to stand. There, amidst the rocks and the reeds, he found a small, wooden box. It was weathered and worn, its surface covered in carvings that told the story of her life and her death. David hesitated for only a moment before opening the box. Inside, he found a single, faded photograph of the girl, her smile bright and beautiful. Beside it was a note written in her own hand. It was a letter to her family, apologizing for any pain she had caused, and begging them to find peace. With tears streaming down his face, David took the letter and the photograph, placing them both gently on the surface of the lake. The wind picked up, carrying them away, and as they drifted out of sight, the girl's spirit seemed to lift from the water. The air grew still, and the forest fell silent. For the first time in generations, peace had come to Mirror Lake. David stood there, watching as the spirits of the forest slowly faded away, disappearing into the mist. He knew that he would never truly be able to forget what had happened here, but he also knew that he had done the right thing. He turned and began the long journey back to civilization, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had witnessed but also filled with a sense of hope. Perhaps, in time, the legend of the haunted lake would be forgotten. Perhaps the girl and her spirit could finally find the peace they deserved. As he walked away, the last thing he saw was his own reflection in the still, mirror-like surface of the lake. And in that reflection, he saw not himself, but the girl who had suffered for so long. He saw her smile, and he knew that she was finally at peace. The night air was thick with anticipation as David made his way to Mirror Lake. It was the night of the full moon, and he could feel the energy of the spirits surrounding him. He had come prepared, setting up a makeshift altar at the edge of the water. Candles flickered softly in the darkness, casting eerie shadows across the rippling surface of the lake. As the moon slowly rose above the treetops, David's heart raced. He could feel the weight of the past months pressing down on him, the knowledge of the tragedy that had unfolded here so many years ago. He took a deep breath and began to speak, addressing the spirits directly. "I come in peace," he said, his voice barely audible over the sound of the water. "I know the pain you have suffered, and I know that you have been wronged. I am here to help you find the peace that you deserve." For a moment, there was silence. Then, from the depths of the lake, a single eerie laugh echoed through the forest. It was faint at first, but grew louder and more menacing with each passing second. The ripples on the surface of the water grew more pronounced, and David felt a chill run down his spine. "You think you can help us?" a feminine voice called out. It was the voice of the young girl, trapped for decades beneath the lake's surface. You think you can free us from our torment? David swallowed hard. I can try, he replied, his voice steady despite his fear. I can try to right the wrongs that were done to you. The girl's laughter filled the air again, harsh and bitter. You do not understand, stranger, she said. We are not the ones who must be set free. Puzzled, David hesitated. Then who? He asked. The ones who took us, the girl replied, her voice growing distant. They must pay for what they have done. Only then can we find peace. David considered her words, feeling a growing sense of determination welling up inside him. He knew that he could not simply free the spirits without addressing the underlying issue. He needed to find a way to bring justice to those responsible for their suffering. He gathered his courage and began to speak once more, his voice firm and steady. I will find those who did this thing, he promised, and I will see that they are made to answer for their crimes. I will bring peace to you and to your kind. There was another long silence, and David feared that his words had fallen on deaf ears. Then, slowly, the surface of the lake began to calm. The ripples subsided, and the eerie light that had danced across the water moments before faded away. The girl's voice floated back to him one last time. You have proven yourself honorable, stranger, she said. You have shown us that you mean no harm. In the name of those who have suffered, I grant you permission to seek out those responsible for our plight. With that, the spirits of the lake faded away, disappearing back into the depths from which they had come. David stood alone at the edge of the water, feeling a mixture of relief and determination washing over him. He knew that the road ahead would not be easy, but he was prepared to face whatever challenges lay before him. He knelt down and began to gather up the candles, carefully extinguishing them one by one. As the last flame flickered out, he turned and made his way back through the forest, back to his life. But deep down, he knew that he would never forget the promise he had made to the spirits of Mirror Lake, and he would stop at nothing until he had fulfilled it. David returned to his quiet life in the city, but the memories of Mirror Lake lingered in his mind like a phantom limb. He couldn't shake the sense of unfinished business that haunted him, and so he decided to share his experiences with the world. He knew that he couldn't keep the truth about Mirror Lake to himself any longer. He spent countless hours poring over his photographs, each one a testament to the beauty and horror he had witnessed. He carefully selected the most haunting and evocative images to share with the world, crafting a story around them that was both terrifying and poignant. When he finally felt ready, he submitted his work to a prestigious photography magazine. Weeks passed, and David found himself checking his mailbox every day, hoping for a response. One morning, he received a letter from the magazine's editor, informing him that his work had been accepted for publication. David was overcome with a mix of disbelief and elation. His photographs would be seen by people all over the world, and perhaps they would finally find the peace they so desperately sought. The magazine's release date was set for the next full moon, and David anxiously awaited the day it would hit newsstands. As the weeks passed, he found himself growing increasingly restless. He knew that once his story was out there would be no going back. He began to have doubts, wondering if he had done the right thing by sharing the secrets of Mirror Lake with the world. On the day the magazine hit shelves, David bought every copy he could find. He took them home and spent the rest of the day buried in his apartment, unable to bring himself to look at the photographs. Finally, as the sun set and the full moon began to rise, he mustered up the courage to flip through the pages. As he gazed at his own work, he felt a mixture of pride and guilt wash over him. The next morning, David woke to find his inbox flooded with emails. People from all over the world had written to him, sharing their own experiences with supernatural phenomena and expressing their gratitude for giving voice to their own fears and doubts. Some even claimed that they had seen the same spirits in their own backyards, trapped in the shadows of forgotten lakes and rivers. As the days turned into weeks, David became a celebrity overnight. His photos were featured on television and newspapers, and he was inundated with requests for interviews and speaking engagements. He found himself traveling the world, sharing his story with anyone who would listen. He spoke of the importance of understanding and empathy, of recognizing the humanity in even the most terrifying of creatures. And yet, even as he spoke, he couldn't help but feel a sense of disconnect from it all. The fame and fortune were nice, but they couldn't erase the memories of the girl he had seen trapped beneath the lake's surface. He wondered if he had done enough, if there was more he could have done to save her. In the end, David found solace in the knowledge that he had given the spirits of Mirror Lake their due. He had brought their story to the world, and in doing so, he had given them a voice. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough. He continued to travel the world, sharing his story and his photographs, always mindful of the responsibility that came with revealing the secrets of the universe. For even as he sought to understand the mysteries of the supernatural, he also sought to protect those who were still left to wonder. Years have passed since David's fateful encounter with the spirits of Mirror Lake, and his life has taken a dramatic turn. The haunting images he captured that night have not only made him an internationally renowned photographer, but they have also served as a catalyst for his newfound passion, advocating for the preservation of indigenous cultures and their spiritual beliefs. David spends his days traveling the world, speaking at conferences and events about the importance of respect and understanding when it comes to indigenous history and traditions. His message is simple yet powerful. We must acknowledge the atrocities that have been committed against these communities in the past, and we must work together to create a more equitable future for all. The invitations to speak come flooding in from all corners of the globe. He finds himself addressing audiences in far-flung places like Australia, New Zealand, and South America, as well as closer to home in the United States, Canada, and Europe. His words resonate deeply with people from all walks of life, and he soon becomes known as one of the most influential voices in the movement for indigenous rights and cultural preservation. One evening, after a particularly well-received speech in a packed auditorium in New York City, David is approached by a tall, striking woman with piercing green eyes. She introduces herself as Amaya, a representative of the Kogi tribe from Colombia, and she asks if he would be willing to visit her community and share his story with them. David is honored by the request and, after a brief conversation, they agree upon a date for his visit. As he prepares for the trip, he can't help but feel a sense of anticipation and excitement mixed with trepidation. He knows that the Kogi people have a rich cultural heritage, and he worries about how his presence might impact them. Upon arriving in Colombia, David is greeted by Amaya and several other members of the tribe. They lead him deep into the lush, verdant mountains where their village is hidden away from the outside world. The air is crisp and clean, and the sounds of birdsong fill the air. David feels a sense of peace wash over him as he takes in the beauty of his surroundings. Over the course of his stay, David spends time with the Kogi people, learning about their customs, beliefs, and way of life. They share stories with him about their ancestors and their connection to the earth, and he begins to understand the profound respect they have for the natural world. One evening, as they sit around a crackling fire, David tells the story of his encounter with the spirits of Mirror Lake. The Kogi people listen intently, their faces lit by the flickering flames. When he finishes, there is a moment of silence before one of the elders stands up and addresses the group. "Your story, David," the elder says, "is not so different from our own. For generations, our people have lived in harmony with the spirits of this land. But now, with the encroachment of modern civilization, our way of life is threatened. It is up to us to protect what is sacred and pass on our knowledge to future generations." David nods, feeling a deep sense of kinship with the Kogi people. As he looks into the eyes of the elder, he realizes that their fates are intertwined. They are all part of a larger struggle to preserve indigenous culture and tradition in the face of globalization and exploitation. The days that follow are filled with discussion and debate. David finds himself learning as much from the Kogi people as they do from him. He feels a renewed sense of purpose and determination to continue his work, knowing that he is not alone in his fight for justice and equality. As the time comes for him to leave, David exchanges contact information with several members of the tribe. They invite him to return anytime, and he promises that he will do everything in his power to support their efforts to protect their land and their culture. As he boards the plane, David can't help but reflect on the incredible journey he's been on since that fateful night by Mirror Lake. He knows that the road ahead will not be easy, but he is filled with a sense of hope and resilience that has been forged through his experiences with the Kogi people and other indigenous communities around the world. As the plane soars above the lush green mountains, David gazes out the window, his mind filled with memories and the promise of a brighter future for all. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden light across the wilderness of Canada, David stepped out of his car, his heart filled with a mixture of anticipation and nostalgia. He took a deep breath, the crisp, clean air filling his lungs, and surveyed the landscape before him. The familiar trees, the rugged terrain, and the still lake in the distance all held a special place in his heart. It had been years since he had last set foot here, but the memories of his time at Mirror Lake were as vivid as if they had happened just yesterday. David trudged through the dense forest, his boots sinking into the soft earth with each step. As he walked, he couldn't help but marvel at the beauty that surrounded him. The canopy of trees above him formed a natural roof, filtering the last rays of sunlight into dappled shadows on the forest floor. Birds chirped in the distance, their songs carrying on the gentle breeze. Even the rustle of leaves underfoot seemed to take on a melancholic note, as if the forest itself was welcoming him home. Finally, he emerged from the woods and found himself standing on the banks of Mirror Lake. The water, once turbulent and disturbed, now lay still and serene, reflecting the peaceful sky above. David felt a lump form in his throat as he took in the sight. So much had happened since he had last been here, and yet the lake seemed to remain unchanged. It was as if time had stood still, and everything else had simply moved on without it. He removed his backpack, revealing a carefully wrapped bundle. As he unwrapped it, he revealed an ancient-looking staff, adorned with intricate carvings and feathers. This was the staff that the elderly Native American shaman had given him all those years ago, as a symbol of his acceptance into their community. David ran his fingers over the smooth wood, feeling a deep connection to the past and to the people who had come before him. David made his way to the edge of the lake, where he had stood on that fateful night so many years ago. He knelt down, placed the staff on the ground, and rested his hands on his knees. For a moment, he closed his eyes, allowing himself to be lost in the memories. He remembered the fear and the excitement he had felt when he first discovered the haunted lake, and the determination he had felt to uncover the truth behind the spirits that haunted its depths. He remembered the countless nights he had spent alone in the forest, studying the old diaries and journals, piecing together the puzzle of Mirror Lake's past. And he remembered the moment of truth, when he had finally confronted the spirits, offering them the peace and the understanding they so desperately craved. He recalled the sense of release that had washed over him as they faded away, their vengeful spirits finally set free from the burden of their anger and their pain. Now, as he stood here once again, David felt a new sense of purpose. He had become more than just a photographer, more than just a seeker of truth. He had become an advocate for indigenous rights, a voice for the voiceless. His experiences at Mirror Lake had changed him forever, shaping him into the man he was today. And as he looked out over the serene waters of the lake, he knew that his journey had only just begun. Slowly, he rose to his feet, the staff in his hand. He turned in a circle, taking in the forest and the lake, and the connection that bound them all together. He knew that he would never truly leave this place, that the spirits of Mirror Lake would always hold a special place in his heart. And as he took his first step away from the lake, he knew that he would carry their story with him, sharing it with the world, ensuring that their legacy would live on forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this cinematic journey. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Have you experienced a spine-chilling horror that left you trembling? Share your terrifying tale with us by emailing nightmarenetwork@hotmail.com, and we'd be thrilled to feature it on our platform. Until next time, happy movie watching.